Iran's currency has lost most of its value. Its economy is under the heaviest sanctions regime in the world. Its military has been struck directly, its nuclear sites targeted, its top commanders killed in broad daylight. By every conventional measure of national power, Iran should be finished. A country in this position should be negotiating from weakness, begging for relief, watching its influence collapse across the region. Instead, Iran is doing something almost no one expected. It is behaving like a country that believes it is winning. And the uncomfortable truth is, by the only measure that has ever actually mattered in this conflict, it might be right. Because sometimes the side that looks like it is losing everything is actually the side that understands the war better than the side that appears to be winning it. On the surface, the damage to Iran looks undeniable. Inflation has soared past levels most economies would consider catastrophic. The Iranian rial has collapsed against the dollar, wiping out savings and pushing basic goods out of reach for millions of ordinary families. American and Israeli strikes have hit Iranian nuclear facilities directly, something that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Senior commanders within the Revolutionary Guard have been assassinated, a level of penetration into Iran's military leadership that speaks to just how exposed the country has become. Oil exports have been squeezed, banking access has been cut off from much of the world, and Iran's own officials have publicly admitted the economic pressure is the worst they have faced since the revolution. And yet, in the middle of all of this, one number keeps showing up in reports that does not fit the story of a country on the verge of collapse. A number that suggests Iran is spending resources not on survival, but on expansion. That number is military spending, and specifically where it has been going. Despite the sanctions, despite the currency collapse, Iran has continued funding missile production, continued supplying proxy groups across the region, and continued investing in defense infrastructure at a pace that should not be possible for a country supposedly on the edge of economic ruin. This only makes sense once you understand that Iran has never measured victory the way the United States does. America tends to define winning as decisive, a surrender, a collapsed government, a flag lowered somewhere. Iran defines winning as still standing when the other side gets tired. This is not a new idea for Tehran. It is the same lesson it learned from watching the Soviet Union bleed itself in Afghanistan, and the same lesson it absorbed from watching America spend 2 decades and trillions of dollars in Iraq and Afghanistan, only to leave without the outcome it wanted. Iran's leadership does not need to defeat the United States military. It only needs to survive long enough and inflict enough cost along the way that the war becomes politically unsustainable for whoever is funding it. Outlasting has always been Iran's actual strategy, not outfighting. And history has shown more than once that a nation willing to endure pain for years can beat a nation that is only willing to spend money for months. But endurance alone does not explain everything happening right now, because while Iran has been absorbing strikes, it has also been quietly building something else entirely, something that has nothing to do with weapons. While the world watched Iran get pounded by sanctions and airstrikes, Tehran was busy rewriting its list of friends. Iran deepened its strategic partnership with Russia, exchanging drone technology for military cooperation, tying its future to a country that also has every reason to see America distracted and overextended. At the same time, Iran expanded its economic relationship with China, which continues to buy Iranian oil despite sanctions, giving Tehran a financial lifeline that keeps the economy from fully collapsing even as Western banks refuse to touch it. Beyond these two major powers, Iran has also worked to build sympathy across parts of the global South, positioning itself as a nation standing up to American pressure rather than a rogue state deserving isolation, a narrative that resonates in regions with their own complicated history with Western intervention. And then there is a deal that barely made headlines outside the region. A quiet agreement expanding cooperation between Iran and its neighbors on trade routes that bypass the sanctions architecture almost entirely. On paper, none of these moves look dramatic. There is no single headline event, no dramatic military victory to point to, but together they represent something the United States has struggled to counter for years. A slow, patient rebuilding of Iran's global position, happening in plain sight, while the world's attention stays fixed on the more visible signs of Iranian weakness. While Iran has been quietly building alliances and absorbing damage, The war has been extracting a very different kind of cost from the United States and its partners, one that rarely gets discussed in the same breath as Iran's struggles. American military resources have been stretched across multiple simultaneous crises: Iran, the broader Middle East, and ongoing commitments elsewhere in the world, forcing difficult choices about where limited attention and funding actually go. Gas prices in the United States have felt the ripple effects of instability near the Strait of Hormuz, translating global tension into a very local, very personal frustration for American voters, the kind of frustration that shapes elections. Political division at home has deepened, with growing numbers of Americans questioning why the country keeps finding itself entangled in Middle Eastern conflicts that never seem to fully end. Echoes of the same war fatigue that shaped public opinion during Iraq and Afghanistan. And there is a quieter consequence, one most people have not connected directly to this conflict at all. A shift in how allies and rivals around the world are recalculating America's willingness and ability to sustain long-term military commitments, a perception that, once damaged, is extraordinarily difficult to repair. None of this means America is losing in any conventional sense, but it means the war is costing something that does not show up in a single headline, something slower, quieter, and in many ways more dangerous than a lost battle. This is how you end up with a war where one side is visibly suffering and somehow still gaining ground. Iran's economy is in ruins, its currency has collapsed, its military has taken direct hits that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. None of that is an illusion. The damage is real. But Iran never needed to avoid that damage to win. It only needed to survive it, and it has, while simultaneously deepening ties with Russia and China, expanding its influence through economic partnerships that bypass Western pressure entirely, and building sympathy in parts of the world that see its resistance to American power as something worth quietly supporting. Meanwhile, the United States has paid a cost that is harder to see but just as real: stretched military resources, rising domestic frustration, growing questions from allies about how far America is actually willing to go and for how long. Put all of that together, and the picture becomes clear. Iran was never trying to win the war the way America defines winning. It was trying to make losing look survivable, while making American victory look exhausting, expensive, and ultimately unsustainable. And if history has taught us anything about wars like this, the side that outlasts the other does not need to win a single battle. It only needs to still be standing when everyone else has run out of patience. Which means the real question was never whether Iran could defeat America. It was always whether America could defeat time itself.